Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I'm your host, Alfredo Brown. Joined as always, I've got Dave Kluge with me. And guys, today it's the Wednesday Flex Show. This is basically the episode where we are going to talk about anything we really want in fantasy football, but give it the actionable spin for you guys so that you can make your fantasy football teams better. And Dave, I still think we don't know enough about these teams after 2 weeks. But in certain places, you're starting to see opportunities to maybe buy players, sell players, the trends that are happening, guys that have already exceeded our expectations. The NFL, for the most part, is giving us these opportunities to make moves in fantasy football.
Yeah, after week one, I do my rest of season rankings and I try to make marginal changes here and there, especially on the really liquid situations, like where we have two running backs, so going back to back in drafts in the same team. And then in week one, we see who it's favoring, and I'll make those little moves here. But I think week two, then we start to get a better idea. Of course, we've got situations like the Lions where it's okay, we can just throw week one away as a fluky game. But then there's other situations like the Colts where it's okay, now they've done two
Right.
games and now we're going to pay a little bit more attention to it, but that could still be a trap. Like we were talking about pre-show, Derek Carr last year was the QB2 in fantasy, and everyone was saying Derek Carr with the offensive coordinator that he's always needed, this is a new better team, and they just beat the Cowboys and things are great. And then they got pummeled in week three. So I think now I'm hearing all the same narratives about Daniel Jones and the Colts, just a great quarterback, offensive coordinator mesh here, and they just beat the Broncos, and don't be surprised if they come out and you get Derek Carr in week three. So we start to see the starts of trends, but
Yeah.
those starts of trends can also end up falling off very abruptly.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what it did from week one to week two. Like in week
Mhm.
one, we're saying, oh, the Lions, the offense might be cooked without Ben Johnson, and then they come out and they hang. What was it, a 50 burger? They
51. Yeah.
51. Like they go out and
Mhm.
have this insane game, and then we're talking about who would you rather start your team with, JJ McCarthy or Caleb Williams? And then JJ McCarthy goes out and puts a stinker on the field, and it's just guys, after 1 week, we really don't know enough about these teams, these players. And I honestly do think after 2 weeks, we still don't know enough about these players. But I think we can make some, I don't want to use this term, but I'm going to have to, some pretty good educated guesses on what is going to happen going forward because of the things we can see on film or what's in the data. So, Dave, we each have 5 observations that we've come up with after this last week. Why don't you kick us off with your first one and how you think it's going to help fantasy managers?
So we're still kind of overreacting here, I think, is the theme
Yeah.
of this show still. And how about this for an overreaction? Keenan Allen is going to make Lad McConkey a fantasy bust, and people are just panicked right now. If you
What
look
what
at
do you
the
define as a bust?
not living up to his ADP, coming up well short of his ADP. And we got to remember, Lad McConkey was still getting drafted in round two, even after
Yeah.
Keenan Allen was there. And when you look at this wide receiver room right now, Lad McConkey is third on the team in receiving yards. It's Quentin Johnson, Keenan Allen, and then Lad McConkey. Now, I don't think that Lad McConkey is ever going to be oh, I've got to bench this player. He's just terrible right now. But I think we drafted him expecting a big step forward in year two. And right now, he's pacing to take a step backwards. 120 targets, 94 receptions, and just over 1,000 yards. That is very short of what we expected when we drafted him in round two. And I was hoping that I could go to the film and find something that would give me hope. And I got to be honest, after digging into it, I think I'm left with even more question marks. Last year we saw Lad McConkey was just in a great role where he was getting the really short, easy, intermediate targets, the stuff near the line of scrimmage, the things that allowed him to create after the catch, that allowed him to rack up a lot of catches. And then we also saw the big plays downfield where he was playing outside and he was getting behind defenses. Well, now Keenan Allen gets a lot of those short targets when they get near the end zone. Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen, they have a connection that they've been, developing for years, and he's going to look Keenan Allen's way near the red zone. And then on the big plays, we see Quentin Johnston now is kind of taking a step forward in his development, and he can make those big plays. So I think that there's still going to be enough volume here to make Lad McConkey somebody that you're putting in your lineup every single week. I still think that he's the best receiver on the team as well, but I am starting to expect some regression from last year. We were hoping that this guy would just be a top five wide receiver, take that big step forward in year two. And it's just
Mhm.
such a crowded room there in Los Angeles that I think we need to start looking at Lad McConkey as more of a middling to high end wide receiver two than the wide receiver one you drafted him to be.
Well, I mean, I think both you and I had him at as what, wide receiver 12 or 13? Like he was
I was a
around that
little more
area?
bullish on him. I had him at wide
Okay.
receiver 9 in my draft rankings, and
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
I'm
okay.
owning up to it. That was probably not the best call. I was very aggressive on Keenan Allen. I was aggressive on Quentin Johnson as well, but I still thought that Lad McConkey would do okay. And maybe this is just overreacting because he hasn't found the end zone yet. If he finds Pater, we're probably not panicking whatsoever. But it hasn't been great through the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of like what is most likely to happen, right? So, like right now, sure, it doesn't look great in the fantasy stat sheet, but I was taking a look at it, and we've still got Lad McConkey on 23% target share right now. It's 14 targets through 2 games. Like it's not terrible. Like it's not a complete negative here. I think you have to ask yourself a couple of things. Is the Quentin Johnston touchdown rate going to be sustainable? Is Keenan Allen, light at his age and with his injuries, likely to make it through a full season? I'm not suggesting that these things need to go wrong for McConkey to have a good season. It can still happen. Because there's also questions: can McConkey make it through the full season? Right. I think the big thing to take away from here, though, is that the Chargers are going to be passing the ball more. You talked about this on Monday's show. Like the Chargers are going to be passing the ball more. So it's like even if the target share isn't as big as we wanted it to be, the pie itself of passing has gotten bigger. So I'm not that worried. I don't know that he's necessarily a bust. I think like I had him probably around wide receiver 12 pre-draft, and I think it's most likely that he's probably around something wide receiver 16, 17, 18 in that range, mid to, like you said, mid to low end wide receiver 2. Um, I don't know that I call it a bust. I think it's just slightly disappointing. I think when it's something like a Tyreek Hill from last year, where you draft him early and he's not even finishing top 24, like that's where it just sinks your fantasy team.
Yeah, and I don't think he's gonna like sink your fantasy team, but I do think also that like you are looking for ceiling with those early picks, and I think if
Yeah.
you're drafting a guy and you expect him to take this step forward in year two, which isn't uncommon at all for a guy to look really good as a rookie and then look even better in year two, and I think that we're gonna look at less production now in year two than we got in year one, and that's just not something I want to see for a young player. It almost kind of reminds me like remember like Melvin Gordon, a very very good running back. I'm talking about the
Mhm.
same team here, but like he lost out on goal line work and passing down work in that offense. So while he was clearly like one of the most talented running backs in the league, he wasn't getting the passing down work, he wasn't getting the touchdowns, and it kind of made him frustrating in fantasy. And now with Lad McConkey, like he's clearly the best wide receiver on the team, but if he's not getting all of the looks near the red zone and he's not getting the big plays behind the defenses as well, it makes him a very valuable football player, but just a little less valuable in fantasy.
So then what are you doing with McConkey? Are you trying to trade for him? Are you holding him if you had him? If you have him, are you trying to sell him to someone who believes they're buying low?
Now, I think that's where it gets interesting. Like, I don't think that you should just sell him for the sake of selling him, but we're going to talk about some risers on the show as well. And I think like if you could trade a Lad McConkey for a Roma Dunze maybe or a Tedero McMillan, these other young running backs that are ascending, I'd be very interested in making those moves.
Oh, that's interesting. That is very interesting because I kind of look at it as like you mentioned Roma Dunze specifically. I would trade Roma Dunze for Lad McConkey like right now. I think I liked Roma Dunze obviously better as a prospect, but it's once again it's like the touchdowns, the target rates, are these things sustainable, or is it just the first couple of weeks what we've got going on here? I'm intrigued by that. I'm intrigued. All right, I'm gonna give you my first observation here, and it's that I think we don't quite know what the Jaguars are yet. And I know that the vibes are atrocious with the Jaguars, but I'm willing to bet. And I made a trade in my home fantasy league with my college and high school buddies that I will reveal at the end. That kind of puts my money where my mouth is. But I am willing to buy low on Brian Thomas or Travis Hunter and sell high on Travis Etienne. I think that what we've seen so far, Brian Thomas, 19 targets through these 2 games. And I know it's just like it doesn't look good. And you're going to see the bad highlights where he's alligator arming things. But I kind of go back to what is most likely. Are we going to see the Jaguars have Diami Brown, Brenton Strange, and Parker Washington as their top 3 leading receivers throughout the rest of the year? Probably not. Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas lead the team in targets, but they don't have the receiving yards. They don't have the touchdowns that we're looking for. And that's something that I think obviously changes now. Just because we weren't, you and I weren't drafting Brian Thomas Jr. at his ADP doesn't mean that the cost isn't way better now. Like if a lot of people were looking at him as a maybe late first, early second in drafts, you and I
Mhm.
were looking a little bit differently. I'd say the equivalent trade cost now is probably something closer to like a fourth or fifth round pick. Like there's a lot of people that are very, very out on Brian Thomas Jr. And I'll talk about my trade that I did a little bit later. But the Jaguars have some extremely challenging opponents coming up who are very, very good against running backs. It's not going to be an easy schedule for Travis Etienne. They actually have the number one hardest remaining strength of schedule for running backs and the sixth easiest remaining strength of schedule for wide receivers. This is not a defense that is overwhelming to other teams.
Mhm.
And this is an offense that's going to have to get going with Trevor Lawrence in this passing game if they're actually going to win games. Like they have to stay in it. So I definitely see a turnaround here for the wide receivers. And at the cost for each of these guys, Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter, I'm willing to buy it on them.
Yeah, I think Hunter scares me a little bit just because, like, we did see last week that he did play more snaps on defense than he did on
But did
offense.
it?
And
He didn't pay more on defense than he did on offense.
yeah, he did. He had a higher rate and more total snaps than he did on offense. Like he was, I forget the exact numbers off the top of my head. I want to say it was like a 49 and 48. It was really, really close, but he played one more snap on defense than he played on offense. And that's what kind of scares me a little bit here. The nice thing though is that Liam Cohen has shown his cards. Like going into week one, he said Travis Hunter is going to be mostly on offense. And then going into week two, he said Travis Hunter is going to play mostly on defense. So I do wonder if it would just be as simple as like Liam Cohen telling us every single week. But also when I go back and I watch the game, Brian
He
Thomas
did.
Jr. was not in a role that he should be in last week. Like this is not the type of player he is. He isn't a catching a ball through traffic across the middle of the field type of receiver. He is a straight line speed guy who can get behind defenses and make the big play. So I think that what they tried doing last year, like there are very specific roles in Liam Cohen's offense, and Travis Hunter has kind of been playing in that slot role, that Chris Godwin role, the catching the short balls across the middle of the field role, and he did that pretty well in week one. Didn't make a lot after the catch and didn't score a touchdown, but still pulled the targets and looked decent in that role. And then I think in week two, with the game plan being to have Travis Hunter more on defense to help break up the pass game for Cincinnati, they kind of put Brian Thomas Jr. into that high volume across the middle of the field role. And I've got to imagine that when Liam Cohen goes back and looks at that tape, he says, I was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole here. Like this isn't what Brian Thomas Jr. is supposed to
Right.
do. So I hope that he can kind of get the players back into the spots that they belong in.
So you're absolutely right. Yeah, Travis Hunter did play one more defensive snap than he did offensive. I'm wondering how much of that is game script dependent. I wonder how
Yeah.
much of that is trying to get him reps early in the season.
I mean,
Um,
he did what he was supposed to on defense too. Like he isn't
yeah,
a blitzing, smashing a running back in the A gap type of defensive back. He is a ball skill guy, and there were multiple plays that like he broke up passes, which is exactly what they were hoping he'd do. So that's kind of what scares me too. Is like he looked good on defense, and it's like now they might want to get him more on defense because he excelled in that role. So I'm a little bit scared, but like I said, I'm just hopeful that like I'm benching Travis Hunter this week, but I'm hoping that we
mhm.
see him back on offense, back in that slot role, catching those short targets across the middle of the field. And assuming he does that, then going forward, I'm much more confident putting him in my flex.
Yeah. I'll say this: the offensive snaps were the exact same from week one to week two, 42 snaps. Obviously, percentages change,
Right.
but as long as the
He ran a lot
offensive
more
role,
plays. Yeah.
yeah, as long as like the role doesn't diminish on offense, I'm not that worried. What I like, if we start to see that it diminishes, then like, yeah, obviously, like that's going to be it. Something that you and I have sort of said throughout the offseason is I don't think you go and make that trade and you make that move for Travis Hunter to not use him as a wide receiver, at least as much as you should be, right? So I think it might end up being game script dependent, which could be a little worrisome. You're right there. I'll say this, just a little teaser to that trade I did. Travis Hunter was one of the guys I traded away because I needed to make sure I was giving up some value as well. So, Dave, why don't you hit us with your next takeaway from week two going into week three?
I don't even think that this is like a hot take or an overreaction. I just want to talk about Tucker Kraft. I've got him as my tight
Yeah.
end for rest of season, and a lot of people are probably going to say like, "Whoa, whoa, you're overreacting." But like, I think this is more of an indictment on like how bad the tight end market is right now because T.J. Hawkinson's been terrible, Mark Andrews has been terrible, Travis Kelsey has been terrible. So moving those guys down just makes it really easy to move Tucker Kraft up. And one of the knocks that I heard against Tucker Kraft this offseason, I think is very well warranted. Like he isn't a very natural route runner. He's not a guy who is going to be beating man coverage, but when I went back and I watched how he's been utilized over the last couple of weeks, that doesn't matter. Like I really don't care where he struggles because Matt LaFleur is so good at drawing up opportunities to get him the ball. The first target of the game, exactly what I want to see. Like they run a play action play. And I think what Tucker Kraft does better than almost any tight end in the league is selling the play action. Like Alfredo, you watch film, you know how this is. You see it all the time where like the tight end will just kind of like throw a forearm, throw a little chip block, and then release. Tucker Kraft like fully engages his blocker. Like he will get up under the pads, push him back, and then throw him to the side. And then he's just wide open in the flat. And over half of his targets so far this year have come on those play action plays where he's able to just really, really sell it, get out in the flat. The first ball that he caught, he didn't have anybody within 15 yards of him. Like he was just wide open because Josh Jacobs is good. The Packers' run game is good, and defenses have to play the play action honestly. Even on the big 57-yard play, that was awesome. Like I loved that play design. First of all, like Matt LaFleur coming out in 13 personnel with Savion Williams as the lone receiver on the play immediately tips the hand of the defense. Like, oh, this is very clearly going to be a run. They've got three tight ends out here.
Right.
They've got Savion Williams, who's a good blocker, but then they throw Savion Williams in motion, and you can see that it's a zone defense. And it was just such a savvy play by Matt LaFleur to draw up. Savion Williams coming off a motion, has a full head of steam, and he just takes off downfield, and everybody kind of gravitates towards Savion Williams, and Tucker Kraft just kind of trails him 15 yards behind. So while everybody's moving towards Savion Williams, not wanting to give up the deep play, there's Tucker Kraft just like wide open, ready for it. And when he's open like that, Jordan Love is good enough to just put it on a player. So a lot of this, sure, like we can nitpick his footwork and his route running and his release package and all this sort of stuff, but it doesn't matter in this offense. Matt LaFleur realizes the type of player that Tucker Kraft is, and they are going to scheme up touches to get him the ball where he's got Green in front of him. And if you're a defender and Tucker Kraft has 15 yards to pick up speed and he's coming right towards you, good luck bringing him down. Like this dude is a runaway freight train. So yeah, I'm not going to get too hung up on like the little nitpicks about his profile. He's just in a great offensive environment, and he is just a freight train with the ball in his hands. For me, it's Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Tyler Warren. Those are the only guys I prefer ahead of Tucker Kraft for the rest of the season.
So interestingly enough, I am McBride, Bowers. I'm still keeping Kittle at tight end 3, and then I've got Kraft at 4, Warren at 5.
Yeah.
Just
I mean,
'cause
it's
I want to see
it's
more.
IR. Like if Kittle was healthy, he'd be ahead of
Sure.
him. But yeah, missing
Yeah.
the next 3 weeks at least.
Yeah, I mean, what makes Tucker Kraft so good is just his ability with the ball in his hands, like to create and continue to get yards after the catch. What I liked most, and this is actually, I think it's a good segue into the guy that I want to talk about because he's also on the Packers. But what I liked most with Tucker Kraft was that there were plays that were being drawn up specifically for him. It's not
Mhm.
just that he was some sort of a security blanket for Jordan Love. It's not like he was the third read and it was some backyard ball. These were plays that were getting drawn up specifically for him. And a lot of times what we were seeing too is because I think the Packers are figuring out what their passing game is going to be, is they were doing a lot of clear out stuff. And that leads me into my talk here about Matthew Golden. And I think that Matthew Golden is going to be the Packers wide receiver 1 soon enough. A lot of what we saw in this last game was a lot of clear out. A lot of, hey, Matt Golden, Romeo Dobbs, Dontavian Wicks, clear out. I saw so many cardio routes for Matthew Golden and a bunch of these other guys where it was just clear out so we can dump the ball off to Josh Jacobs, clear out so we can dump the ball off to Tucker Kraft, clear out, clear out, clear out. On a couple of these, though, Matthew Golden could have had 2 really big plays, and I actually hate that these were his only 2 targets. And the timing just doesn't seem to be there with Jordan Love yet. But when it is, this thing can seriously pop off. It was right now 2 targets in week 2,
Mhm.
league high average depth of target of 40 yards last week. Just insane. That's basically all he's getting used for is just these throws that are downfield for big plays. The throws just barely missed. The first one was that it could have been a touchdown, but Jordan Love underthrew it and it gave the defender time to catch up and knock the ball away. And the second one was Matthew Golden running full speed and it was still just 1 yard out of reach. So once that timing gets locked in there, we're talking about potentially 2 targets, 2 receptions for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns here. Like we're talking about something crazy. And I'm not suggesting that's the kind of thing you need to buy into, but what I am saying here is they're going to be needing to look for playmakers. Dave, you and I remember I saw you talking about this with some of the other guys at Football Guys. Jaden Reed, him being out, I know he had the collarbone thing, but he also got his Jones fracture surgically repaired, which
Yeah,
could
he's
lead to
probably
a
out for the season.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is it could lead to a much longer time off the field for him, which means this team's going to need to have a wide receiver step up. And I know we've seen sort of what Romeo Dobbs can be, and I think we get it. I think there's still people that have a candle lit for Dontavian Wicks and what he can be, and he's not a bad prospect or a bad player by any means, just inconsistent. The door's wide open for Matthew Golden here to be the wide receiver one on this offense. Now, what that means for fantasy, I don't know. Because wide receiver ones for fantasy could mean a wide receiver 2 or 3 on any other team. It depends on how much they're going to throw the ball. But Dave, the Matthew Golden door seems to be very wide open. I just want to see the usage a little bit different. They've sort of got him in the Christian Watson role at
Mhm.
Texas when he was in college. Average depth of target was 12 yards. Here in Green Bay, he's looking at almost double that at 22 and a half, the sixth most in the NFL right now. We're just kind of seeing that I don't think they're giving him the full menu of routes yet in the offensive game plan.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest thing for me, because like I wasn't too inspired by the usage over the first couple of weeks. It does kind of feel like Xavier Worthy last year. Remember, like Xavier Worthy early in the year, like just kept having these
Mm-hmm.
like near misses, and it's like, oh my god, if they could just dial it in and like start connecting on these deep plays, Worthy's going to explode. And then everything just went haywire. Rashi Rice got hurt. They had to change Xavier Worthy's role, but that's kind of what it feels like now. Like they're just so close. Like we could easily be talking about Matthew Golden coming off of a Thursday night performance where he had 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like it was,
Right.
really, really close to having a big game. But I think the biggest thing is that Jaden Reed is injured now. Like Jaden
Yeah.
Reed is a very, very good player, and Matthew Golden can do a lot of the same things that Jaden Reed can do. And I'd argue
Yep.
that he can do more than Jaden Reed can do when it comes to like beating press coverage, playing out wide. That was kind of a limitation of Jaden Reed. So I think that a lot of those schemed up touches where you would see Jaden Reed go in motion before the snap and kind of setting up clear out routes to get him out in space downfield, that should go to Golden now. Um, I still think Dobbs is just a very underrated receiver. He's going to be on the field quite a lot too. He doesn't have the same efficiency on his targets that a guy like Matthew Golden can. I think Dobbs is probably going to be the target leader in the wide receiver group, but I could easily see Golden being the type of guy who's averaging so much per target and scoring so frequently that he ends up being the top scoring receiver in this offense.
And that's the thing is I think that we're going to see is that like you can only be held back by targets so often if you start making plays that the
Mhm.
targets then start to just gravitate towards you. I just don't think they've given him the full assortment of routes yet. I mean, it'd be silly for the Packers to not utilize their first round pick more and in more creative ways, given that Jaden Reed is out for potentially the season. Because right now the route participation is there, 92% route participation for Matthew Golden. He's playing in 2 wide receiver sets, 3 wide receiver sets. Like you said, he can play outside, inside. A lot of this is us saying be patient with the rookies, be patient with the rookies. And we're not really going to talk about them today, but all the rookie running backs that everyone's panicking on, for the most part, you can just be patient with them. Like guys, this is just the thing is give these rookies time to get in there, get the playbook, and allow for coaches to open things up a bit more.
And the last thing I'll say too is like I've heard people say like, oh, Jaden Reed knocked out in the first drive and Matthew Golden still only got 2 targets. I think a lot of people like just don't understand like the weekly game planning that goes into like how NFL coaches operate. And we want so easily to just like, oh, on the fly, let's just change the whole game plan and make Matthew
Right.
Golden the part of the offense now. But we saw that a lot of those touches that would typically go to Jaden Reed ended up going to Dontavian Wicks because he's a guy who's been in the offense for a long time and he could step into that role. This is so similar to week one where Xavier Worthy got knocked out very early in the game. Marquise Brown gobbled up 16 targets. Everybody went crazy over Marquise Brown. And I said, with a week to regroup, I doubt that they want to make Marquise Brown the offensive focal point.
Yep.
And sure enough, he comes out with 5 targets the next week. And I think that now they were kind of pushed into a position where Dontavian Wicks was the focal point as the guy who got dropped into Jaden Reed's role. But I think now with a week to regroup, we're going to see the targets getting funneled more towards Matthew Golden and not to Dontavian Wicks.
It is exactly that. All right, Dave. Give us your next one.
They said we weren't going to talk about rookie running backs, but I kind of want to talk about these rookie running backs because people are panicking about them, and in the theme of overreacting. Oh no, Alfredo, we overdrafted every rookie running back. They all suck. Should I drop them for J.K. Dobbins? I mean that's being a little overdramatic, but that's kind of what I'm hearing right now, and everybody just here, whoosah. Woosah,
Hmm.
just take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. Like we go through this every single year. These rookies get off to slow starts. Alfredo, we've done like 250 something shows now at this point. How many times have we said to exercise patience when you draft rookies?
Every single time, man. Every time we talk about him.
Yeah, and here we are, 2 weeks in, everybody's panicking. I don't know about you. I watched Ashton Jinty's tape, and he looks pretty darn good. Like everything that we liked about him at Boise State, the contact balance, the burst, the aggression, and sure, like Zamir White and Dylan Lauby are a little bit more involved than we expected them to be. The offensive line isn't great, but like this is still a guy who's getting a lot of touches and has a lot of talent. And I don't know how much more you can want from that. Omari and Hampton, we knew this. Like Greg Roman likes to have two running backs out there. Najee Harris is not a slouch. He's going to get some touches, but we drafted Omari and Hampton because he is a great athlete and he's got big play upside. And even if he's splitting a backfield, he can still make big plays. RJ Harvey right now, sure, he lost some snaps to Tyler Bidet and Adam Prentice last week. He might be in the doghouse for missing some pass blocking assignments, but you saw the upside in week one when he had this beautiful run up the middle for 40 something yards. Travion Henderson missed some pass blocking assignments and he's in the doghouse. But that big catch and run from Ramadre Stevenson, they said was drawn up for Travion Henderson. And I think with a week to regroup and like help him, these are still developmental guys. Like they are playing a very different game than what they've played for the last 3 or 4 years in college. The game is faster, it's bigger, it's stronger, and it takes some time to acclimate. But I see so many people panicking about all of these rookie running backs. And I'm just here to tell you, chill out. It's going to be okay. Like if people are selling and panicking on these rookie running backs, go out and buy them because I still I haven't seen anything, and I'm talking about these four specifically. Hampton, Ginty, Henderson, and Harvey. I haven't seen anything from these guys that causes any panic for me yet.
No, no. I mean, the only one that I would give some pushback on is Harvey. And it's just simply because of who Sean Payton is, right? Like
Right, fair.
he's going to want to use multiple running backs, and the offensive game plan is so weird to try to predict. And he's got a few things that he needs to iron out. But like Ashton Jinty, come on, guys. We like we know what we have there with Zamir White and
Mhm.
Dylan Lobby. Like the touches are not going away from Jinty. There's also a thing of just like when the game is out of reach and your offense is playing that bad, Geno Smith throws 3 interceptions.
They're just gonna put him on ice and like just say, what, on to week three.
Yeah, yeah, and I know like there's people are gonna say, well, it's concerning the 2 minute drill. Dylan Lowby comes in. Don't worry. They're going to use Ashton Jinty more as the season goes on. And with Amari and Hampton, I think a lot of that too was just people were leaning into Najee Harris might miss the whole season because of his eye. And then the ADP got steamed up. Like he should not have been going in the middle of round two and early round two where we're seeing him and even late round two. Like Amari and Hampton was probably a third to fourth round pick. And Trevion Henderson got steamed up to the third and fourth round. He probably should have been a fifth or sixth round pick. So it's like, these players are not bad and patience needs to be exercised. What people are freaking out about is where they drafted them and the early returns as opposed to why they drafted them, which is what they could be when it matters. And that's
Mhm.
why, like, just go back to patience. And when it matters, these players are too talented. Like, I tweeted something earlier. I wish I had it in front of me here, but like, you go back to the first few weeks. I'm trying to scramble and find it as fast as I
I
can.
saw Ryan Heath
But
tweeted that like Christian McCaffrey was averaging like 2.1 yards per carry through his first 2 weeks, and I remember everyone panicking, like, "Oh, I drafted this guy in
yeah,
round three." Like, but yeah, you
I
just chill out.
I got it right here. He stole that from me, by the way. I'm just kidding. He didn't. Ryan, you're great. Yeah, like so some notable running backs had rough starts. Ken Walker the third as a rookie, he was the running back 67 through the first 4 weeks. Jameer Gibbs was the running back 33 through the first 4 weeks. Bucky Irving, obviously not the same ADP, but he was running back 41 through the first 5 weeks. Devon Achan, another guy. Like there are so many of these players, whether they were first round picks, second round picks, third round picks, whatever, it takes time. It takes time. They become the league winners. Just exercise some patience here.
Can we just laugh a little bit that how everybody was like terrified to draft Rashi Rice because he'd be missing the first 6 weeks.
Um,
Meanwhile, they were drafting Travion Henderson and
right,
RJ
right.
Harvey and Matthew Golden and Travis
It's
Hunter ahead of Rashi Rice. I don't know about you, but I'd much prefer 0 points in my bench than 3 or 4 points in my flex spot, but I digress.
the fantasy gods look at us and laugh when we think we're making our decisions. All right. I want to talk about another rookie here, and this has been a very rookie-centric episode, and that's because I think that's where a lot of people have most of their concerns. This one's not a concern. Well, for me it is, but a lot of people are very, very excited about Emeka Egbuka, and I think for good reason. Emeka Egbuka is a very talented player, and I want to put a caveat on this. I do think that this might be the highest that Emeka Egbuka is valued throughout the season right now because he is the wide receiver 10 in fantasy at the moment. And I think, and I'm not saying you need to, but I think if you get the right price and you can make the right move, Emeka Egbuka is a sell candidate in fantasy because of potential touchdown regression that could be on the horizon here. And I'm not saying he's a must sell. I'm saying he is a guy that you go out and you can trade him for a Drake London or a Nico Collins, someone who is very, very fresh, or an Ashton Ginty, someone who's very frustrated with underperforming players early in the season. And they see Egbuka and they remember the hype and they're like, man, 3 touchdowns already. He is the offense. Well, let's back up a little bit and look at the 1,000-foot view here. I'm not saying Chris Godwin coming back is going to derail Egbuka, but it's not going to help, especially when Egbuka's got an 18% target share on the season. He's wide receiver 39 in target share. He's wide receiver 40 in targets. He's wide receiver 72 in targets per route run, which is like that's when you're really looking at when he's on the field, is he getting looked at? And some of these targets have been screens and real easy first read targets. And so there are manufactured touches, but simply stated, not enough. Not enough where I'm saying, man, Chris Godwin is out. Like Egbuka should be looking at 8-9 targets a game. I'd actually much rather prefer to see the targets over the touchdowns right now and see if the touchdowns come. But the 23% touchdown rate just does not seem sustainable. 3 touchdowns on 8 receptions. I do love the player. I'm on a lot of teams. I am holding him, but I mentioned that trade earlier in the show and the one that I did. And a lot of the players I'm talking about are involved in that trade. I traded away Emeka Egbuka and I got one of the players that we've already talked about in return. Dave, where are you at with Egbuka? Because some of the names that I think you could trade him for, Drake London, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., AJ Brown.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get that, I don't think I'd want AJ Brown. I am
Okay.
very concerned about the Eagles' offense. Yeah, looking at my rest of season rankings, I've got Zay Flowers ahead of him, Jamison Williams, T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Tedero McMillan, Devontae Adams, and then of
And
course
once
Brian
again,
Thomas
this is
Jr., Ladd
not a
McConkey, Nico.
knock. Like
Right,
this is not a knock on Egbuka. I think this is just a
he's inside
rational
my top
approach.
24. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
got him
like
as a
he
wide
is a
receiver
wide receiver.
22.
Yeah, he's a wide receiver too rest of the season.
I
Just
will
don't think he
say,
should be valued as a top 10 guy. Sorry,
I know you
go.
went back and watched the film, but did you see how close we were to getting that fourth touchdown too? Like
Mm-hmm.
where Ibuka like ball hit him in the hands 40 yards downfield, and that was
Mm-hmm.
just so frustrating to see. Like that would have been awesome. Would have been the first player ever to have 4 receiving touchdowns in his first 2 games. I do understand the pause because I was looking like through the top 40 receivers, a bigger chunk of Ibuka's production has come from touchdowns than any other receiver. And I mean, that's
Right.
just naturally going to skew his value a little bit. I do like that he gets a lot of the easy looks in the offense. You know, he's getting the little hitch routes out of the slot. He's getting the pop passes and the screens and the end
Yep.
arounds. And I think that stuff does raise his floor a little bit while also making his efficiency look a little bit murky. So I do like that he's getting a lot of those layups. But like you said, a lot of those layups typically go to Chris Godwin. And when he returns, we might not see that same usage going forward. So yeah, I mean, I threw some names out there that I'd prefer. I think Zay Flowers is probably like the lowest ranked wide receiver that I'd prefer ahead of Abuka. But like right now, behind Abuka, Travis Hunter, Jalen Waddle, Tyree Hill, Devonta Smith, Roma Dunze, Cortland Sutton. Like I would prefer Abuka ahead of all those guys. Maybe not Roma Dunze. Dunze is
I was
close.
going to
I don't
ask,
know
Roma
what to
Dunze
make
was the
about that one yet.
specific one because that's different. He's getting touchdowns and targets. Like
Yeah.
everything looks amazing for him. Like he looks like everything we've wanted Marvin Harrison Jr. to be.
Yeah, I almost wonder if DJ Moore just like isn't a good fit for this offense. I think he
You
does
think
a
he gets
little bit too
traded?
much. I do, and I said that on last night's Dynasty show when I was recording with Jeff Bell. I just don't think he's a good fit for the offense. And like right now, they have these developmental pieces that they invested a lot of draft capital in that are just wasting away on the bench. And like every day that Colson Loveland and Luther Burden can't get on the field and play a full snap share hurts their chances of developing into a good weapon. So another thing is that like so much of Ben Johnson's offense is predicated on timing and being at your spot and being where you're supposed to be. And DJ Moore is more of a freelance guy. Like his best plays come when the play kind of breaks down and he's able to find a soft spot, work his way back to the ball. And it's just not seeming like a great fit in this Ben Johnson offense. So I think he is a likely trade candidate just because then it opens up the door for them to start getting more reps for Colson Loveland and getting more reps for Luther Burden and developing these developmental pieces that they drafted this year.
DJ Moore to the Kansas City Chiefs.
I mean, that's like a perfect fit. That's exactly what they need in that offense. Of course, Xavier Worthy could come back this week, and Rashi Rice could be back,
Sure.
by week 7, and that would just be unbelievable if like this team goes from like Tyquan Thornton and Marquise Brown to Xavier Worthy, Rashi Rice, and DJ Moore. Yeah, buy your Chiefs players now while you can if that's the case.
Just we're going off on this tangent. Is there anywhere else you think you could see him, DJ Moore? I'm
Hmm.
trying to think. Like I'm looking. There's Green Bay. There's
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 no way they're trading him to Green Bay. Oh my
right.
god!
Like I
Like
can't imagine they would do it, but
it
like
would
that's
burn the
where.
city of Chicago to the ground if that happened.
Yeah. Like I don't. Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's been looking for more receivers.
Pittsburgh makes sense, but I think that DJ Moore has the same issue that DK Metcalf does, where like he's not a timing receiver, like he is an
Right.
off script guy, and I think that just kind of snowballs the issues that they're having in Pittsburgh right now. I think Kansas City makes the most sense. Washington, I know they
Bills.
already invested. Bills would make some sense too. I mean, they spread the ball so thin there. And then Washington, like I know they traded for Debo Samuel this year, but if they're really pushing the chips in, well, they got Jaden Daniels on his contract. I don't know if they can make the salary cap work. That's the problem. Is DJ Moore sitting on $100 million
Mhm.
contract, but wouldn't be surprised if they see the Bears try to move off of him.
All right. Let's go to. We each have a couple more left here. We're gonna have to hurry up through these. So why don't you give us your next takeaway?
Tedero McMillan will be a wide receiver 1 this year. I know like the theme is overreaction. I don't even know if I'm overreacting here. Like this dude is good. Like good,
Yeah.
good, good.
You are
8th in
reacting.
yards right now. What was that?
I said you are reacting
Yeah,
correctly.
and yeah, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm reacting. I don't know, but like right now, I think that this is like we talk about buy lows all the time, and I don't think there really are buy lows in fantasy. That's a term that we throw around, but like right now, I don't think people have really caught on to Tedero McMillan yet and what he's doing because he hasn't got a touchdown. So like in fantasy scoring, he's not doing great. He's like outside of the top 24, but he's 8th in yards. He's 11th in targets. And I know a lot of that came off of Bryce Young throwing 55 pass attempts last week, but he looks so good. Like I went back to the film and was just blown away by how good he looks. Like he is just a silky smooth mover. He can make the contested catches. He can make plays after the catch. I think the one thing is that he doesn't have like the elite breakaway speed. Like there was one play that he caught. It was like a deep post across the middle. He caught the ball, had some space in front of him, and like in my mind, I was like, that should be a touchdown. And he got chased down and caught. And that's the issue when you're a 4-5 runner. But still, like he had a nice fade to the end zone that Bryce Young just short armed for whatever reason, and he wasn't able to come down with. He had another spectacular sideline catch where like half of a foot was out of bounds and it didn't count as a catch, but like he was just draped by a defender and was able to get up, catch the ball with one hand, and come down with it. We're seeing the deep crossers that allow him to make after the catch. We see the boundary shots. We see the fades in the end zones to me, and I know we kind of talked about this in the preseason, but he's doing all the things that Mike Evans did in 2023 when he was playing in a Dave Canales offense in Tampa Bay. And that's the exact plan that they had for Tedero McMillan, and they're rolling it out now. I gotta say, man, after diving into the film, like I think this guy is legitimately a top 10 wide receiver from a talent perspective. Now, of course, the Panthers and Bryce Young and all those things can convolute the fantasy discussion a little bit, but the talent is there. And I'm just a believer in betting on talent. And I think that he can emerge as a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy by the end of this year.
Oh, it's incredibly realistic for him to be a top 12 fantasy wide receiver. I think right now I probably have him in the top 15. Like he's ahead of guys like T. Higgins, Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yep. Yep.
I think
I've
you
got,
can make arguments that he's ahead of guys like AJ Brown and
yep.
some of these other receivers that have been underperforming so far.
So he's my wide receiver 13, and I've got him ahead of Garrett Wilson at this point, too. So, like, the
Okay.
guys that I have ahead of him, like Brian Thomas Jr. is still a spot ahead of him, but like, I might be willing to move Brian Thomas Jr. for Tedero McMillan right now. Devontae Adams, Lad McConkey, Nico Collins. These are all guys that are like trending down while Tedero McMillan is trending up. So I've got him at wide receiver 13 in my rest of season rankings. So like he's already on the fringe of being a wide receiver one. Like I said, he's trending up while a lot of the guys directly in front of him are trending down. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if like Tedero McMillan ends up having that like big rookie season league winning year that we'd hope for.
I mean, that's why we were drafting him where we were.
Right.
Like, not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but that was the whole point of wanting to draft Tedero McMillan in the 5th round as often as you can. It's just like take him where you think he can finish the end of the year. But Dave, something you mentioned here is like guys that are trending down, players that are trending up in terms of like rest of season rankings. If Tedero McMillan is trending up and a guy like a Brian Thomas Jr. is trending down in like for, I mean, all intents and purposes, is that the trade you're wanting to make where it's like or are you seeing it as like that's a fair trade, or are you seeing it as like you're losing out? Because I know a lot of people want to do the whole buy low, sell high thing. And I do ask, like, what is sustainable throughout the year? I think both of those guys have. I would actually say it's probably a fair deal. I think I slightly lean Brian Thomas Jr., but not by much.
Yeah, and I think like for me, if Tedero McMillan was just like a random year 3, year 4 guy putting up these numbers, I'd have a little bit of pause. But when I see a rookie come out and just immediately dominate the way that McMillan has been, that's something that I'm going to be a little bit more reactive to. Like this doesn't seem like a fluke, and I think maybe that's why I do have some pause on Adunze still, is because he did have a relatively quiet rookie season. That for me, it's just like we see this every once in a while. Like we saw it with Jamar Chase. We saw it with Justin Jefferson after his first couple of slow weeks. But like we see these guys, Puka Nakua comes to mind as well. Like when these rookies come out week 1, week 2, establish themselves immediately as the alpha on the team, like making highlight play after highlight play, that's not something that I want to ignore, because these are the guys like you don't typically see a rookie trending up for the first couple of weeks and then fall off. Typically when we see these rookies doing this early in their rookie season, it's going to continue.
I'll say this: next 4 weeks for Tedero McMillan are going to be potential shootout type games where
AJ
he's got
Terrell is injured this week too.
yep, easy defenses. You got the Atlanta Falcons with no AJ Terrell, New England
Mhm.
Patriots. Christian Rodriguez has been injured for a bit. Miami
Yep.
Dolphins, Dallas Cowboys. Some juicy matchups coming up there. Like we could be sitting here going into week 7 and talking about Tedero McMillan as a top 12 fantasy wide receiver at that moment.
And had Tedero McMillan just caught one touchdown right now, he'd be inside the top 20 and people would be like super excited about it. But I think just based on the fact, I know it sounds so silly, like, people who are super plugged in are going to realize that he's been doing well. But I think a lot of casual guys are going to say, like, oh, I drafted this guy inside the top 20 and he's like the wide receiver 25 in scoring right now. And I think that like, I don't think that there's a huge buy window here, but like you might be able to sneak Tedero McMillan away right now before, like you said, these like 4 super juicy matchups coming up. Because if he smashes these next 4 weeks, he's going to be untouchable. There's no way you're getting
Yeah.
Tedero McMillan in a trade if he does what he has been doing so far.
I think these rookies are a lot of the guys you need to be going out and investing in, because there's that psychology of it where your league mates are upset. They
Mhm.
feel betrayed. They were told all summer, go and get these rookies. They are going to win you your league. And fantasy managers are assuming that they will win their league by week 3, and they are freaking out and angry, and they are willing to trade. And like that's the intangible thing, is we have that psychology where you say, well, this guy's underperformed. I draft him so high. I just want him off my team. And so even a Tedero McMillan who's not having bad games, they'll say, well, I drafted him to be my wide receiver 1. He's not being that. So yeah,
Time is a flat circle. People
yep.
drafting rookies, getting excited, panicking after week 2, trading them away for cheap, and then kicking themselves when they finish in 8th place. Happens every year.
Every single year. All right. I'm going to say that we don't need to panic over Chase Brown. And maybe we panic over some parts of the Bengals offense, but I'm not going to panic yet over Chase Brown. A lot of it, Dave, is you and I were texting about this 95% opportunity share for Chase Brown.
95.6%. You can round
Okay.
up and say 96%, make it sound even
Okay.
better.
Sure. I'll do that. There you go.
96%.
96%
Ooh,
opportunity
wow. Are you
share.
serious? Whew.
93% of the rushing attempts in this offense. And I wanted to look back because now with Jake Browning taking over, I wanted to look back at what was going on last time that he was the full time starter in Cincy. And last time that he was starting, the offense became very screen dominant. Granted, this was a rookie Jake Browning and a rookie
Hold
Chase
on.
Brown.
I have to pause here. I tweeted that out the other day. I said rookie Jake Browning in 2023 and got shredded by the repliers. I forgot that he was actually a part of the 2019 draft, went undrafted, and spent 3 years bouncing around a bunch of different practice squads. So I made that
Oh,
mistake yesterday
okay.
on Twitter. I'm just trying to save you from the YouTube mob. Do not
No,
say that Jake
no, do
Browning
it.
was a rookie
Comment
in
below.
2023 because people get very, very upset about those semantics.
Jake Browning Hive, stand up and be heard.
Yeah, didn't play a regular season snap until 2023, but he was a rookie in 2019.
Okay. All right. First year quarterback
There
on
you
an
go.
active NFL roster, Jake Browning in 2023. It was a very screen dominant team. They did everything they could to make this simple. One read, a lot of first read targets. Nearly 20% of the passes were screens or designed as first read targets in this offense. And 50% of those were going to the running back. At the time, it was Joe Mixon. You had a rookie Chase Brown who was getting involved as well. And that was when Chase Brown was starting to like creep up and make some plays here and there. And people are saying, man, if he gets a chance, he could be something good. Chase Brown already sees 25% of the screens and the design first read targets in this offense, and that could go up. I'm not saying it's going to be some sort of screen merchant where he's going to be getting a bunch of this, but the numbers that he currently has here are likely to go up. The offense will likely also have to be a bit more run heavy. I know that sounds crazy considering how bad the defense is, but this is going to be one of these things where the Bengals are going to have to slow down games and win efficiently, which is not really the Jake Browning MO. He's sort of Jake Jameis Winston Browning here. But the Bengals know that. And we got to see last time when Browning was the starter, the team increased its run play percentage to well above 40, which is very uncommon for Cincy, who's usually like around 25% and near the bottom of the league. So for them to increase their run rate, to increase the amount of first read targets and screen plays to the running back, I'm not worried about Chase Brown. He's still a very talented player. I think with the adjustment of the quarterback, it's going to hurt different players in this offense. And Dave, I know you want to talk about that as well.
Yeah, and I think this just kind of opens up like the next thing I was going to say. My overreaction. I've heard a lot of people just saying like the Bengals are cooked without Joe Burrow, and I don't think that's the case at all. Um, I looked over the 7 games that he started in year 5 of his NFL career, 2023. Sorry, year 4. 71.5% completion percentage. He was pacing over a 17 game pace. So I took 7 games and, extrapolated that over 17 games on pace for 4,537 yards, 4,537 yards. I mean, like he was still airing it out a lot. Would have been on pace for 27 touchdowns. And the interceptions are there, but you know what? Interceptions don't hurt Jamar Chase. If anything, it just gives more scoring opportunities for the other team, which allows them to throw the ball even more. I'm not that scared here when it comes to Jamar Chase. And there must have been some viral something going around about Jamar Chase's splits with Jake Browning, because when I shared this about Jake Browning, like playing pretty well when he was the starter in 2023, I had a bunch of replies, not just saying that he wasn't rookie, but the other replies were saying, well, Jamar Chase was a wide receiver too there. And I think that just lacks so much context because week 12, it was the first start that Jake Browning had, and Jamar Chase didn't do a ton, but week 13 blows up 11 receptions on 12 targets for 149 yards and a touchdown. And then the next game, it was a blowout win over the Colts where he didn't even play a full snap share, still just had 29 yards, nothing crazy. Then he gets hurt the next game with an injury. He's inactive for the week after that. He's limited with injury the week after that. And then he was rested in the second half the week after that. So, like, we really only saw 2 full games with Jake Browning up to speed. One of those games, 149 yards and a touchdown. And another was kind of quiet game with 29 yards. But like, there still is a very high ceiling for Jamar Chase. I'd also say that his utilization and just talent level from the player he was in 2023 to the player that he is now, he is a much better player now than he was. Like, it's foolish to think that like they're not going to get the ball to their best player. I have no pause on Jamar Chase. When I did my rest of season rankings, he is still my overall wide receiver 1. And a lot of people were pushing back on that, saying like you need to push Jamar Chase down your rankings. And I'm not. I still think that he is the best receiver in football. They're going to get the ball to him. I think the one thing that I'm a little bit more concerned about Chase Brown than you are, and this is, you and I don't disagree often. I think this is one of like the few disagreements that we might have here. Um, he just hasn't looked very good this year, and a lot of that is, of course, due to the very bad offensive line. But he's too small to break those tackles from defensive linemen in the backfield, and that's where he's getting hit more than anything else. Like we haven't seen him rip off a play from more than 11 yards yet. And now I worry that, with less of a threat under center, that they're just going to be able to load the box up even more. So I'm not panicking on Chase Brown because the opportunity is there. I still think he is a talented player, but I think they're going to try to throw the ball a little bit more. I think that they are going to, not be able to fix these offensive line problems they have. And I think Chase Brown, I knocked him down a couple of spots in my rest of season rankings. I've still got him as a top 12 guy, but I do have a little bit of concern with what we've seen through the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think what happens through uncomfortability with a team like the Bengals is that you have to be more creative. And I think that is sort of a thing that happens with Joe Burrow under center. You start to say, okay, well, we can just let Joe cook. And now I think there's going to be a
Right.
bit more of a we need to be creative with our play calling and get the ball into the hands of our playmakers because we don't want the ball to be in the hands of Jake Browning for too long. Not that
Right.
he's some sort of horrible backup, but I'm not trying to give too much faith and credence to Zach Taylor.
Right.
But I do believe that we can still get some unique and fun usage for Chase Brown. Um, Dave, the old adage that, volume is king for running backs, I think for the most part rings true. Even when running backs have been inefficient, volume helps a ton. And I think that's going to be a big driving force, not only for Chase Brown, but for the next guy that I want to talk about here. And Jordan Mason is a player who is going to be the starting running back for the Minnesota Vikings for at least the next 4 weeks while Aaron Jones is on IR, potentially more. And I'm going to say this there's going to be two sides to this coin. Jordan Mason will be a top 15, heck, let's say even top 12 running back over the next 2 weeks. And then I fear that it will all come crashing down with this Vikings offense because Aaron Jones will be out for the 4 weeks with the hamstring. Could potentially be longer, 6 or 7 weeks. He's an older gentleman. Hamstrings, soft tissue injuries, they linger. Jordan Mason has two really good matchups in the next 2 weeks. One against the Cincinnati Bengals and one against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But then after that, you get the Cleveland Browns, who are number 2 against fantasy running backs, and they have been holding running backs to minimal yardage. You get a bye week, which is another week for Aaron Jones to heal up. Then we're looking at week 5. It's the Philadelphia Eagles, who that run defense is very good. We got to see what they look like when, oh my gosh, who's their Georgia D tackle? The spitting
Uh,
guy. It's not Jordan Davis.
Jalen
It's
Carter.
Jalen Carter. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was mixing up my Georgia
Spitting
D
guy.
tackle. Spitting guy. So we got to see what the Eagles run defense is like. The Los Angeles Chargers are number 3 against fantasy running backs. Detroit Lions recovered nicely in week 2, and they're number 11 against fantasy running backs. There is a very tough stretch of a schedule for the running back position for Jordan Mason, who, for the most part, has not been a guy that like catches a lot of passes out of the backfield. A lot of this is going to come down to, can he win up the middle? Can he win running the ball on a lot of these low volume, or sorry, not low volume, but low value touches? On top of it all, you got Carson Wentz coming in at quarterback. That could be better than JJ McCarthy. Don't get me wrong, but we're hoping that Carson Wentz at quarterback is going to be good and that there's going to be scoring opportunities and goal line opportunities for Jordan Mason, because Carson Wentz is not a big check down guy to the running backs, at least.
No, he is not.
His bottom third amongst starters in the NFL right now. He's around 15% in targets to the running back, who he does love to target his tight ends. So, TJ Hawkinson might be something you want to hold on to over the next few weeks here.
He looks so bad.
Everyone looks bad right now.
About TJ Hawkinson. He looks like a 39-year-old tight end out there. Like, I don't know what happened to him over the season.
Volume cures a lot of ailments.
So I'm hoping, yeah.
I listen, the vibes with the Vikings don't feel great. And that's the thing, is I think there's going to be a little bit of the fool's gold. And I'm sure there's going to be people here like, no, Jordan Mason won me my league last year. He's going to be the starter. You'll see. I prefer him rest of the season. And you know what? The next 2 weeks, I think he's probably going to be amazing. Probably going to be a top 10, top 12 running back over the next 2 weeks. What I'm going to say here is be prepared to move from Jordan Mason, or be prepared for what's coming over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks here, Dave.
Let me ask you something. First of all, I'll talk about Jordan Mason first because I watched his
Sure.
film. Really, really like him. Like there's just a lot
Oh,
to
he's a
like.
good
He's just
player.
such a
Don't get me wrong.
pure running back. Yeah, I mean, patient, strong, smart, good footwork, finds the creases, does everything that he wants to do. Christian Darrisaw also looking like he should be back this week, which will be huge for the run game. Um, Going completely off script here though, Alfredo. Not that we have a script, but
Yeah.
just off the top of my head, Carson Wentz comes out, throws for like 350 yards and 4 touchdowns this week. Gets a big decisive win over the Bengals, which isn't all that crazy. I mean, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks look really good in this Kevin O'Connell system. What does that mean for JJ McCarthy? Like, could we be looking at JJ
Oh
McCarthy
no.
potentially getting like Trey Lance or Tua, like where this veteran comes in and outplays him and they just say, like, hey, this is a win now team and we're not getting there with JJ McCarthy? This could be bad if Wentz comes out and looks good these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think anything's possible. Especially because we've seen KOC be a guy who can work with anyone at quarterback, even Josh Dobbs. I don't know that even just because of what we got to see in that short span of the fourth quarter of week one, like that glimmer of hope is there, and
Yeah.
how much Kevin O'Connell was like really touting his guy, and JJ McCarthy had won the faith of his teammates after week one. Week two looked horrible. It was
Mhm.
horrendous. The footwork was all over the place. The just everything. The confidence looked shot. Obviously, there's the injury that everyone is talking about. Is it real? Of course. I mean,
It's real. Yeah,
we're
I
not getting
just
into that.
we are not
Yeah,
conspiracy theorists. That
yeah,
he
we're
injured himself. Alfredo, I know you played sports before. Like I'm sure anybody who has ever played sports
it,
has injured themselves, finished a game, and then woke up the next day in a ton of
yeah,
pain. Like it's not
yeah,
that uncommon. Joe Mixon did it last year. Joe Mixon finished a game after a hip drop tackle and then missed the next 3 weeks. Like these things
right.
happen. Take off your
Yeah.
tinfoil hats.
The adrenaline is going. Like, I'm not by any means even a great athlete or a good athlete. I am a subpar Sunday morning warrior athlete. Okay. I walked to my car with a broken foot. Like, these
Right.
things will happen. Um, so do I think that it means that there's no JJ McCarthy the rest of the year if Carson Wentz plays well? No, I think that they do turn back to JJ McCarthy, and I think they kind of learn and let him say, okay, this is what worked in our offense with Carson under center. Let's try to, get some of that working for you, JJ. Learn from what you saw here. I don't know that they can go backward. I think some of that is just the sunk cost fallacy of the NFL, where they want to at least know what they have. Because if JJ doesn't have it after this year, it becomes the Anthony Richardson thing, where you
Mhm.
can't say like, oh, this guy didn't have a lot of reps in college. We need to get him reps, and then he gets the reps, and you're like, actually, what we need to do is not give you reps, and then they do a Joe Flacco, and then Carson Wentz just keeps playing. It's possible. It's certainly
It,
possible.
we've
I
seen this
don't.
script before. Yeah.
I know. I know. I don't think it's likely, but that's one of those things. Like we're just guessing.
I'm going to throw one more in here, and I
Sure.
know we're already like over time, but this morning I was kind of interested. I wanted to watch another player's film, and Javante Williams. I think he's back. I think he is very, very back. I don't think this is a dead zone running back situation where it's just, so many people are just like, oh, Javante Williams, he's just keeping the seat warm until somebody else can take over. And we had those concerns in the preseason where we said this could change on a weekly basis. We don't know who the guy's going to be. They're all pretty bad. I'm willing to just say that I was wrong. Javante Williams is not a bad running back. I think that horrific knee injury that he had in 2022 lingered for a couple of years. But if you look, all of his efficiency metrics, that's why I went back and watched the film because all of his efficiency metrics are in line with what we saw his rookie season in year two before the injury. I mean, he's generating just as many yards after contact per attempt as he did as a rookie and in year two. We saw that fall off a cliff over the last couple of years. Um,
Mm.
the biggest mover in my rest of season rankings this week. And like, I still feel like I could even move him higher. I sent out a trade last night, my Travion Henderson for somebody else's Javante Williams, and it was declined. I mean, like that's where I'm at right now. Like I would move off of Travion Henderson. I'd move off of RJ Harvey. I think Javante Williams is going to be Dallas's RB1 for the rest of the season. And I think there might still be some people out there saying like, oh, he's a dead zone running back. It's going to, turn into a pumpkin at some point. I uh, I think he's good enough to retain this role for the rest of the year.
I think he's playing well enough right now. And I'm not going to say like that for sure he turns into a pumpkin. I think based on what we're seeing right now, based on the schedule that he has right now as well, he's going to have a lot of people at 8-1 or 7-2 in their fantasy leagues after the first 9 weeks. And then after the bye, things do get a little bit hairy. He's got the Eagles again with Jalen Carter in there, hopefully. Kansas City Chiefs defense, the Detroit Lions defense, Minnesota Vikings defense, LA Chargers defense. It
Ooh,
could be one of those where he's going to be hitting a gauntlet when you need him most. This is not me saying you need to trade him now. I think if you drafted him, you drafted him at such a low cost. Enjoy the ride while you're on it. I would just say, like, if you have him, enjoy this as you get him to his bye week. You're 7-2 or 8-1 or 6-3 or whatever. Have contingencies in place. Like, make sure you are investing in some of these young guys that could take off later in the season, because I think that we have to remember these games. Yes, after 2 weeks, we want to say X player is my running back, whatever, for rest of season. But these games, this game of fantasy football is played in pockets where
mm,
players are going to be good for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, and then it can very easily go away. So with the guy that's had the injuries he's had, it does worry me slightly. But I don't think you can buy him in fantasy. I don't think you need to be selling him in fantasy. And if you have him, you're
just
holding him
enjoy it.
because
Yeah, looking like one of the
he's winning
best,
weeks for
best
you.
one of the best values in drafts right now. Yeah, and
Yeah.
this also like you might know the answer to this, but how old do you think Javante Williams is?
In dog years or football years, he's like 48 years old, but I believe he's like 25 or 26.
Yeah, like turned 25 in April.
Yeah.
Still way younger. Like I don't know why in my head I think it's just the injuries and like I think because he came on in
He was a
2021
20-year-old
where it was
rookie.
yeah, and it was like still the COVID years where like time since then has just been like really tough to track. But like, I don't know why. Like in my head, I thought Javante Williams was like 27, 28. I kind of like just compartmentalized him with all like the other dusty veterans. And now I'm like
Mhm.
rethinking all of the stances I had where it's like, wait, this guy got hurt at 22 years old and then had a couple of years to recover and is still younger than RJ Harvey. Like
Yeah.
he is still a very young running back. So I think that I just like because of the injuries, because of the poor efficiency over the last couple of years, I had just kind of written Javante Williams off. And I wish I had it. And I wish I drafted a lot more Javante Williams now. And I didn't draft a lot of Javante Williams. And now nobody's trading me Javante Williams. And I'm sad because I don't have him on my teams and I don't know how I can get him on my teams. So I
Yeah,
just
there's a
wanted to
few.
sneak that into the end here.
No, no, you're good. Like, and I'm in such a weird place with Javante because I really liked the talent, but I am still a little skeptical. We didn't have the best week one, but we had a very efficient 2 touchdown performance. And then week two, he just absolutely pops off. But this is the same New York Giants defense that we saw that like Ja'Cory Krusky Merritt in week one was able to run all over as well.
Right.
So like I'm
And that's why even like the
the jury's still
efficiency
out.
metrics from week one weren't great for Javante. But even when you watch that film, I mean, that is such a good Philadelphia defense. Like they were just smothering him. And he was, as Matt Waldman likes to say, making lemonade out of lemons. Like there
Yeah.
was really nothing for him to do. I think like you throw any running back in that situation and they're going to struggle. And he was still able to have a fantasy relevant day. He was able to generate yards after contact. He was able to accelerate through defenders. Like all the things that we liked about Javante when he was coming in as a rookie were on display in week one, even if the total yardage wasn't there. I'm
Mhm.
just, maybe this is me like overcorrecting for my big preseason fade on Javante Williams, but I'm eating the cheese now, man. He looks good.
I'm still a little lactose intolerant. Like I'm not saying he's going to be bad. I'm pretty agnostic to Javante right now. That's why I just say hold, keep him, ride it out. Dave, some of the players we talked about today, I made a trade in my home league, and I was teasing this at the beginning of the show. Not that anyone was sitting around, an hour to hear what trade I made, but I this started out as me wanting someone in my league put Brian Thomas Jr. on the trade block, and I said, okay, well, let's see what we can do. And it started out initially as like a, hey man, I'll give you Travis Hunter and Isaiah Pacheco for Brian Thomas Jr. And he's like, well, I'd prefer Jordan Mason over Pacheco. I was like, okay, well, if I'm giving you Jordan Mason, that's a bit more. Like we're gonna have to do more here. And he's like, well, what do you think? And I was like, let me send you a blockbuster. Let's see what you think. So we ended up settling on this. I sent him Jordan Mason, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Hunter, and Emeka Egbuka in exchange for Chase Brown and Brian Thomas Jr. Now, you and I both like the do a lot of players for can consolidate down because there's always players you can add off the waiver wire. So the players I ended up adding off the waiver wire after this trade were Blake Corum and Taj Brooks. So I've handcuffed my Chase Brown. So Dave, How do you look at this? I know you have your concerns about both Chase Brown and Brian Thomas. But how do you look at this for someone if you're saying, okay, I'm cashing in on players that are really at the height of their value, and I'm doing this thing where I'm consolidating down to, at least in my opinion, what I think are the two best players in this deal?
Yeah, and they are the best players in the deal. And I think my initial reaction when you sent me the trade was that I wasn't crazy about it. And then I asked, you open up two bench spots, who are you able to get? If this is a league where you had 10 bench spots and you're like, okay, now I've got these two open bench spots and I'm going to add Olamide Zaccheaus and I don't know, like whatever. Yeah, I probably wouldn't be thrilled about it. But given that this is a shallow enough league where those bench spots are very, very valuable, and when you can add a Blake Corum who 30% of the touches last week, had a touchdown as well, elite contingent upside, and Taj Brooks handcuffing Chase Brown, I think that makes it worth it for me. When I just saw the trade, I wasn't crazy about it, but knowing that you're able to get those guys off of waivers, I mean, there's something to be said for that. Like in short leagues that don't have really deep benches, I love doing the 2-for-1s, 3-for-1s, 4-for-2s, because people don't really factor that in to
The
the
waivers,
trade,
yeah.
is that how valuable those bench spots are in those short leagues.
And what's interesting enough is like when this guy brought on these players that he got from me, he dropped, not that like I was running to the waiver wire to grab these guys, but he ended up dropping Brenton Strange and Rashad Bateman, who I think someone else in the league is going to go out and be like, cool, let me add those onto my bench. So it's like it almost seems, I think, for a lot of people too obvious of like, oh, you sent a lot of mid for a little bit of like good, right? Um, I just think there is something to cashing in early and making these bets on your team. Like who can you get that's going to really turn things around? This
I
team's
just
2 and
really
0.
hope they can get Jacksonville's passing attack back on track. I have
Yeah.
faith in Liam Cohen because of what he did in Tampa Bay, but like I said last week, it was just square peg in a round hole. Like I don't want to see Brian Thomas Jr. in that role ever again. It's not what he does. Like he is not an Austin Collie who's just going to sacrifice his body
What
across
a
the middle of the
drop.
field.
What a name drop. Austin Collie out of nowhere off the top rope from Dave Kluge.
But like that's just not Brian Thomas Jr.'s game. Like he
Yeah.
is he's a glider. He's a speedster. He can win outside. Like he is not a guy that you want to see running in breaking routes 5 yards
Mhm.
across the field. It's just not what he does. Like he doesn't play with that sort of reckless abandon that you need to in that role. Travis Hunter, however, does. So I want to see Travis Hunter in that role. I want to see Brian Thomas Jr. playing out wide. I think last week was just terrible, terrible game planning.
Bring back Mac Jones. Make it happen.
Bring back Austin Collie.
Nope. Nope. All right, guys. I think that's going to be a wrap for us. Dave and I are going to be back again tomorrow looking at the starts, sits, and sleepers for week 3 to help you win your fantasy football matchups and set your lineups. As always, I want to thank everybody for watching or listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time. Adios.